discover the incredible, unexpected transformation of a lazy boy through 30 amazing small habits. Jake Johnson, 27, lounging in the dim light of his parents' cluttered garage, heard the steady creaking of his childhood desk as he shifted his focus from the faded video game on the screen. He folded his hands, the familiar sense of comfort and ease wrapping around him like an old blanket. But buried beneath layer upon layer of car magazines, hidden from the routine chaos, lay his grandfather's journal, calling to him like a siren. The words grit and vision jumped off the pages, igniting an unsettling feeling deep within him, a spark that felt foreign, yet seductive. Who did he think he could become? As he thumbed through the stories, Jake felt the weight of his own lazy streak pressing down on him, like the grease-stained car parts cluttering the shop. He was the town's go-to mechanic, not because he worked hard but because he was simply available. The image of his grandfather sweat-soaked and resolute loomed large, and a sudden realization struck him. Could he reshape his own legacy? Or was he destined to remain the easygoing boy stuck in this quiet town, perpetually avoiding responsibility? A pit of anxiety began to churn in his stomach as the conflicting thoughts wrestled for dominance. For the first time, the mirror reflected more than just a scruffy mechanic. It revealed the potential man he could strive to become. 30 impactful habits, he muttered, half in jest, yet half in desperate hope. The mere idea terrified him. Could he really change? As days passed, he awoke before dawn to lace up running shoes, abandoning the comfort of his bed. The cheat code of games replaced with silent streets and quickened breathing. The laughter and dismissive glances of his childhood friends echoed in his ears as they teased his attempts to become someone. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The more he changed, the more it felt unbearable. Tommy's jabs growing sharp and personal. Who does Jake think he is? The laughter echoed, warm and familiar, now bitter on his ears. As he layered on goals and ambition, he felt himself slipping away from those who had been his anchor. Jake wrestled with a desperate loneliness, unsure if the pursuit of success justified the cost of childhood friendships. In the heart of unforgiving Willow Creek, the economic strains tightened like a noose around dreams, and he felt the crashing weight of expectation tear at his resolve. And then came Ryan, the ambitious high school kid mirroring his lost dreams, reigniting Jake's fire as a mentor. And yet, what did he know of guidance when his own path was so uncertain? What good was he to anyone when he quivered underneath the pressure of chasing an elusive potential? Just when it felt like the weight of the world might crush him, a storm brewed in the form of threatening corporate giants, inching towards his family's auto shop, a legacy built from blood and sweat. Jake's heart raced, muscles tense as the looming conflict revealed layers of familial loyalty. An agonizing question tore through him. What am I really willing to fight for? The answer hung tantalizingly out of reach, and with each tick of the clock, Jake stood on the precipice of a decision that could define or destroy him. Would he rise to face his fears and reclaim his grandfather's legacy, or would he fall back into the shadows of complacency where whispers of doubt would forever haunt him? The morning sun streamed through the dusty windows of the garage as Jake laced up his sneakers, the warm rays igniting a strange duality within him. Gone was the boy who languished in complacency. A flicker of determination surged through his veins, but alongside it coiled a serpentine fear. What if change wasn't enough? What if he burned too bright too fast and extinguished those remaining ties to the past? Jake leaned against the counter, bracing himself. The clutter of the garage mirrored his thoughts, scattered, confused, and worn over time. Today was not just another day. It was a reckoning. Resolutely, he turned toward the journal. Its pages beckoned him toward self-reflection and goal-setting. Next to it lay a fresh notebook, the pages blank and inviting a manifesto waiting to take shape. 30 habits, 30 days, he whispered, a mantra edged with both anxiety and hope. Each habit represented a milestone, ranging from waking before dawn to practicing gratitude. Plucking them one by one felt like peeling away layers of himself he never wanted to confront. What if he failed? With a deep breath, he jotted the first goal, running 5 miles without stopping. It felt absurdly ambitious yet perfectly reasonable. For weeks, he had pushed through the discomfort of running, legs straining against the early morning chill, determination propelling him forward. He remembered how once, even the thought of such a distance seemed insurmountable, eclipsed by the allure of video game victories. As the days passed, he found solace in the rhythm of his new routine, the streets becoming a backdrop for his transformation. Each mile included a confrontation not just with physical limits, but the enigma of his own device. With every drop of sweat, vague childhood reassurances faded, replaced by the grit he so admired in his grandfather. Yet with this growth came an inevitable isolation, and Jake felt the tug of his friendships fraying, as if every step forward was another step away. One drizzly afternoon, Tommy confronted him outside the shop, anger flashing in his eyes. "Do you think you're better than us, Jake?" he spat, sarcasm lacing each word. The bitterness cut deeper than he expected, his heart racing with a mix of anger and despair. Here stood the ghost of the past, demanding acknowledgement. Was he abandoning everyone who had ever stood by him, the very people who had celebrated his mediocre victories? "No, it's not like that," Jake attempted to explain, words clawing their way up his throat, yet they fell short. Tommy's laughter echoed in his ears once more, the laughter he had come to associate with shame and uncertainty. In that moment of confrontation, something fundamental shifted in Jake. He recognized two pivotal truths. His ambition didn't diminish the value of his relationships, and growth didn't mean severing ties. As soothing as the change felt, it shouldn't cause pain for others. Rather than retreating into himself, he could incorporate his past into this new version, melding old friendships with new goals. Returning home, he sat with Ryan, sharing not just structured mentorship, but intimate recounts of their respective fears and aspirations. As he spoke about the auto shop's potential fight against corporate readiness, he could feel Ryan's passion ignite, and for the first time he sensed clarity. His burgeoning resolve wasn't just about personal triumph. It was about protecting his roots, his family legacy. But as the shadow of corporate giants lurked ominously, Jake faced a different question. How could one protect something without knowing its true worth? He flipped to another fresh page in the notebook, curves of ink forming new thoughts and strategies. How could he be both the mechanic and the man he aspired to become? The sun dipped low as he wrote, a sense of urgency tight in his chest. Change demanded sacrifice, and that truth threatened to spill his newfound resolve. Just as he thought he had grasped the impending tides, news flashed through town like wildfire. The companies had declared war, and with it came the realization that the time had come for Jake to face not only his self-doubts but a fearsome reality. Would he step into the fray, armed with the lessons of his grandfather and the resilience of his mentor? Or would he find himself lost, once again, between dreams and reality? Jake awoke the next morning with the sound of rain pattering against his window. It felt as though the world outside was mirroring the tempest of emotions swirling within him. The news from the previous day weighed heavier than the storm clouds, tainting the optimism he had built through sheer willpower. He lingered in bed, a new urgency tugging at him. The time had come to solidify his path and forge alliances where he felt threatened by upheaval. Wiping away the remnants of sleep, he sprang from the sheets with a decision. This day would not be another drifting ledger of hours. It would be proactive. First, he needed to reinforce his commitment to running, a discipline that tethered him to both clarity and endurance. The 5-mile goal felt freshly intimidating now, but his fear of stagnation overtook the trepidation of failure. He pulled on his sneakers, laced them tightly, and let adrenaline intertwine with the rainous rhythm outside. Though the chill bit at his skin as he stepped out onto the soaked pavement, Jake felt invigorated. With each stride, he embraced the familiar struggle, welcoming the burn in his muscles with an unexpected buoyancy. Thoughts of Tommy's doubts translated into fuel. He would not only prove something to himself but also reconsolidate the intrinsic values of community that he thought were slipping away. As he approached the 3-mile mark, he let shadows of uncertainty be washed away with the rainfall. The realization struck him he didn't need to choose between his ambitions and his friendships. Instead, they could coexist, feeding off each other like roots intertwining beneath steadfast soil. The vision of his father's garage flashed through his mind, where laughter and mechanical chaos had reigned. Why couldn't he embody that space while reaching for greater heights? On the return leg of his run, a plan stirred within his mind. Each of the 30 habits mirrored not only personal growth but also the potential to bring others along for the journey. He could compose a framework that included Tommy, Ryan, and the rest of the crew at the garage. A chance for them to chase their individual aspirations, heralding a cooperative spirit rather than a competitive one. He could cultivate hope and ambition among them, introducing new habits while sustaining the age-old camaraderie they had shared. Later that day at the garage, even under the dreary light of an overcast sky, he gathered everyone for a meeting. As he laid out his thoughts, the initial wariness in their eyes gave way to intrigue. "What if we ran together?" he proposed, his voice trembling with excitement. "I mean, not just running, let us embrace challenges. Like a habit-building club, we can track our progress and check in with each other. If one struggles, another can help." Laughter bubbled up hesitantly but transformed into genuine interest. Tommy, surprisingly, shifted from his corner. "You want us to run? As if that's gonna work." His tone was sardonic, but Jake noticed the twinkle of curiosity beneath it. "Why not? We could include everything from running to mechanical improvements, share knowledge and skills that push us beyond where we are now," Jake countered, challenging Tommy's skepticism. The room buzzed with ideas as they began to murmur icons of various possibilities. Hours ticked by unnoticed, with each suggestion weaving a stronger tie between palatable ambition and community. Yet, even in this moment of unity, a flicker of apprehension whispered at the back of Jake's mind. Would this strategy hold steady against the waves of corporate encroachment? As he navigated this path of inclusivity and growth, he realized there was still more to confront the looming threat of the corporate giants, which had set their sights on their beloved garage. With an atmosphere bubbling with potential, Jake sensed resolve building within him. All changes don't come without conflict or sacrifice. That realization struck his core. As he left the meeting, the storm had subsided, but the clouds were never far behind. What storm awaited would be the true test of their melding ambitions. Could he galvanize this newfound unity, or would the external forces tear them apart? The seeds of his next challenge were planted. A reckoning loomed ahead as the day drew to a close. Time to confront not just the giants standing against them, but the insecurities within himself that fueled his doubts. He was stepping onto a battleground, but he feared the outcome might not only shape his aspirations but define the futures of those he cared about most. Would he emerge as a protector of their shared legacy, or become another victim of a fight he'd hoped to sidestep? The next morning greeted Jake with a glimmer of sunlight peeking through the rain-soaked clouds, casting a hopeful hue over the garage. Despite the light, the weight of uncertainty still cast a shadow over his heart. He had experienced his first taste of what true leadership could be, igniting the potential within his team. But could he rally them effectively enough to withstand the impending corporate threat? Resolving to take steps forward, he returned to the structured approach outlined in his habit plan. Jake sat down at his desk with a blank notebook, its pages a canvas for his ambitions. With every habit, he saw an opportunity, not just for himself but for everyone around him. One habit would focus on group physical activity, another on skill enhancement. He noted practical frameworks for motivation and accountability, understanding he had to establish foundations where all could thrive. The first step was to put his own routines into motion. Engaging in consistent exercise had awakened his spirit, proving he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. He wasn't just running for himself anymore. He was running alongside Tommy, Ryan, and the others in his mind. As he scribbled furiously, Jake began to visualize them sharing their aspirations, confronting fears while backing each other up. The following day, he invited everyone again, this time offering invaluable lessons pulled from his run. Let us create a morning routine, he proposed, blending a group run with skill-sharing workshops afterward. We get up early, run together, then learn something new every week. I'll start with a session on engine tuning. Some remained skeptical, glancing sideways at Tommy for validation. Despite his nonchalant demeanor, Jake saw Tommy's brow furrowing, revealing hints of curiosity. Jake continued, bolstered by his passion. Imagine if we all learned some aspects of car restoration or even just connected through our hobbies. We start small and let that spark fire up our ambitions. The crew grumbled, but a few heads nodded. Laughter and teasing flew around him, pitting Tommy against Jake as the jests took shape into banter. Suddenly, Jake felt a tinge of happiness sparking in the room despite their hesitance. Perhaps the idea was gaining traction, intertwining their fears into a common objective. But beneath that thin film of optimism, seeds of anxiety took root. He recognized that this sense of unity could dissolve as easily as it had emerged. What if they faced resistance once the corporate giants clawed at their efforts? Would his dreams dissipate into fog alongside that cloud cover lingering from yesterday's storm? Jake's instincts clashed with his ambition. As he posed questions to them, he gazed into their faces, seeking reassurance but instead confronting doubts reflected back. He needed to prepare for a confrontation that was more significant than mere competition against rivals. It would necessitate standing against the gravity of disillusionment that social pressures often bring. Later, as he stood alone outside surveying the garage, he felt the world's pulse. Was he strong enough to fortify this fragile framework he had begun to create? He recognized that this journey was both about himself and how he could influence each member of his collective. Yet conflict waited in the shadows, silently pushing him toward an eventual reckoning. His chin raised defiantly against the sky, he felt the winds shifting. Transformative days ahead, full of growth yet riddled with potential pitfalls, awaited him. Exhilaration clashed with unease, and Jake clenched his jaw, ready to strategize their survival and thrive through the chaos. As he stood still among the mechanics of dreams and engines, contemplating the giants looming in the distance, a stirring question hung over him. Would he muster the strength to lead and innovate, or would his attempts crumble under the pressures of competition? The answer to that could change everything. The morning sun broke through the clouds again, illuminating Jake's workspace with a determination that seemed almost palpable. He had returned to his desk wanting to dive deeper into the execution of his plan. Sweaty palms rested on his notebook, a reflection of the tension bubbling within him. Excitement collided with the fear of failure. What if the team saw him as merely a well-meaning dreamer, rather than the leader they needed? He needed a framework, a sturdy blueprint for action. Over the next few days, whenever he felt that creeping doubt, he would sketch out ideas and refine his goals in meticulous detail. Each new idea he penned down held not just weight but potential to reshape not just his journey but the course of everyone around him. As the week unfolded, Jake drew on accountability, reaching out to his team. Let us set personal goals for the month, he suggested timidly. We'll check in every week. He watched their faces fluctuate between amusement and trepidation. It was clear that they operated on a different wavelength than the idealistic frequency he was trying to tune into. The casual atmosphere cracked slightly as discussions sparked about fitness, skills, and camaraderie. Some dug in with light-hearted jokes, while others were quietly resistant. Jake felt the dichotomy intensely. An idea blossomed quietly in his mind. He needed to channel the energy of their skepticism into something constructive. Look, I know this sounds ridiculous at first, Jake began, standing slightly taller, but imagine what we could accomplish if we keep each other accountable. Not just for running, but learning to lift each other as strengths. Let us elevate the entire team. He noticed the glimmer in Tommy's eye, a flicker of intrigue beneath the veneer of indifference. The weight of expectation bore down on Jake. What if, in this call for unity, he was setting himself up for the possible crushing disappointment of failure? The scrutiny of his peers loomed over him like a storm cloud. Yet, Something within him flared a fierce determination, a refusal to back down from this evolution he envisioned. Jake approached Tommy later, wanting to gauge his real thoughts away from prying eyes. "Do you think this can work?" he asked, desperation edging into his tone. Tommy studied him quietly, deliberating. "You could get eaten alive," he replied bluntly. But there was something else in his gaze. A challenge. "Maybe, but it could also mean that we win," Jake countered, fire in his belly. "If we become stronger together, maybe that's worth the risk. I can't lead without trying." Tommy's expression shifted, a mix of skepticism and surprise huddling within. "All right, lead on, then. But better be ready to catch some heat." That marked a pivotal moment for Jake. The moment he recognized that leadership was as much about standing firm in the storm as it was about rallying others under a common banner. The internal struggle, however, didn't dissolve into clarity. It evolved into a fervent desire to prove himself. The strategy was ever-evolving. Each week brought their shared runs, training sessions, and a collective challenge that pushed them closer. Yet, Jake still worried about his growing visibility. What if the stakes were higher than he anticipated? Would they see him as the leader he aspired to be, or simply as someone trying to play a part? As he prepared for different scenarios and the thought of a corporate showdown loomed, Jake realized that their greatest challenge would be against the doubts that lingered within and each other's opinion. Could he truly lead his team through not just workouts and skills, but also through the turbulent waters of skepticism that they had carried for so long? The storm of corporate threats was brewing, and the question tugged at Jake. Were they ready to face it together, or would his world shatter before his eyes? He needed them to trust him, but more importantly, he needed to trust himself. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and Jake sensed it, the inevitability of destiny, the ticking clock urging him to embrace his strength before the confrontation arrived. The clock ticked steadily, a metronome of Jake's rising anxiety. Each day that passed felt like a countdown to a race he wasn't sure he was prepared to run. His team was accustomed to the familiar routine, their comfort rooted in the exchanges that allowed them to drift through the workday. Now, Jake was challenging that, pushing them beyond their limits and into uncertain terrain. Could he truly steer this ship through the storm? During their training sessions, it became increasingly clear that some thrived on the pressure while others shrank away. Jake observed the differing reactions. Several, like Tommy, relished the intensity, their competitive spirits igniting friendships through shared frustration. Others, however, clung to the skepticism that had marred their willingness to change. One afternoon, after a tough workout that left everyone panting, Jake seized the moment. As they circled up to discuss the next goals, he felt the weight of uncertainty pressing against him. He could either capitulate to the doubt or rise above it. "All right, everyone," he said, adopting a more commanding tone, "it's clear we have various comfort zones, but if we want to transform, we each need to step out together." As the words lingered in the air, some nodded, while a few offered half-hearted glances. Jake pushed back against the sting of rejection. This time, he wouldn't allow their nonchalance to dissuade him. He pressed on, inviting them to share their personal challenges. "Let us talk about what you want to get better at, skills, mindset, even stepping up in our roles here. No judgment, just growth. Who's willing to go first?" The silence was heavy, thick with hesitation. Was he pushing them too hard? But he knew breakthroughs didn't come without discomfort. He watched as Sarah, usually quiet, finally spoke. "I struggle with presenting ideas, especially to clients," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Encouraged, Jake turned to the others. "What if we set up practice sessions in small groups? Sarah, you can lead the first one." He glanced around the circle, challenging them to meet her vulnerability with support. "We're all in this together. I'll practice too." Gradually, the room began to buzz. Comments ensued, suggestions flew like arrows toward a target they all now felt a part of. With each contribution, Jake felt a rigid wall within him start to crack. He was no longer an outsider attempting to spearhead change. He was one of them, forging a path forward through shared commitment. Weeks began to fly by, with the team surprisingly responsive, their momentum growing. Each session revealed something new, not only about skills and fitness but about interpersonal dynamics. Jake realized that his aspirations didn't simply rely on pushing the team. It hinged on fostering an environment where they felt empowered to express their concerns and triumphs. Yet, the nagging insecurity flickered within him, refusing to be extinguished. What if they soon realized he wasn't the leader they needed? His scattered confidence reared its head yet again during a particular brainstorming meeting when feedback turned unexpectedly critical. The comments were honest but stung heavily, a stark reminder of how precarious his position remained. "Jake, your ideas are ambitious, but they feel disconnected," one member boldly stated. The room shifted, and he sensed a mix of solidarity with the honesty and a wave of defensiveness crashing over him. He had a choice: battle against the tide or acknowledge the obstacle and pivot. Instead of retreating into his shell, Jake straightened his posture and absorbed the feedback. "You're right. Let us refine this together. I can present rigid ideas," he said, steeling himself, "but we need everyone's insight to mold them into something practical and actionable." His voice, steadied by purpose, seemed to create a slight but impactful change in the room. Jake caught a glimpse of respect in some of their eyes, a flicker of recognition that transcended his initial fear of being just a dreamer. But within him a thrilling uncertainty surged. Did he just earn their trust, or was this a temporary reprieve? The stakes had escalated. Each conversation now teetered on the edge of revelation. Jake was about to face his most significant confrontation, yet not just with his team, but with the persistent doubts clawing at his resolve. The next step was crucial. The question lingered in the air. Would he transform into the leader they needed, or would he falter under the weight of expectation? As he left the meeting, invigorated but anxious, he realized he had one chance left to solidify his role not as a dreamer, but as a fighter. The moment of reckoning was drawing closer, and Jake understood that the true challenge lay ahead. Would he harness the fire within him to light the path forward? The answer was shrouded in uncertainty as he braced himself for what was coming. Jake stood in front of his desk, staring at the clutter that had somehow managed to multiply while he was lost in thought. The chaotic tangles of empty coffee cups and crumpled sticky notes mirrored the storm brewing inside him. The feedback from his team continued to echo in his mind, each word oscillating between constructive criticism and the fear of inadequacy. He clenched his fists, willing himself to harness the energy instead of letting it drain him. As he began sorting through the mess, a stray thought took root. Maybe this was the moment he needed to redefine himself not just as a leader, but as a mentor. The realization hit him like a jolt. If he wanted to facilitate the growth he sought in others, he first had to embrace his own potential for transformation. There was no manual for this journey, but the crumpled notes surrounding him were reminders of conversations waiting to happen, lessons begging to be shared. With renewed determination, he drafted a plan. A system of small weekly challenges, each designed to push not only his team's skills, but also his own ability to guide and inspire. As he typed the email, he felt a blend of excitement and apprehension. Would they embrace the idea, or would it be seen as just another layer of pressure? He hit send, and the message flew into the ether, leaving behind an even deeper pit of uncertainty. The next day, during their morning huddle, the energy felt different. Tommy broke the ice. "So, what's this challenge about?" "Great question," Jake replied, feeling the shift in dynamics. "I want us to build new habits, small ones, over weekly intervals focused on improving our individual skills and teamwork." It was a humble beginning, but this was Jake's pledge. He shared his vision, outlining tasks that went beyond work performance, goal setting, self-reflection, even physical challenges. As he spoke, the initial skepticism morphed into intrigued faces. The first week's challenge revolved around vulnerability. He encouraged everyone to identify a personal or professional fear and openly discuss it. As they went around the circle, Jake felt the weight of every shared secret. Sarah's fear of public speaking surfaced again, and he nudged her toward leading their next group presentation practice. With every gained insight, Jake felt a flicker of his confidence igniting, illuminating aspects of leadership he hadn't yet considered. But even as the team grew closer, Insecurity knotted his stomach. Was he equipped to navigate this new path together? The question haunted him, especially amidst the rising tides of vulnerability. Surely, he couldn't just introduce risks without tackling his own. After several days of internal struggle, Jake realized he had to confront his fear head-on. He invited his team to share their feedback directly with him at the end of each week. Facing the truth might be a bitter pill to swallow, but it was necessary. When he stood before them to ask for their honest critique about his leadership, his heart raced. "I can take it," he said, voice steadied by resolve. "What can I do better?" A moment of silence passed, thick with contemplation. Jake could feel their eyes scrutinizing him, the tension palpable. Would they speak up? Would they push back? Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "You're pushing us to grow, but sometimes it feels like you're also holding back. We need to see you take risks too." The honesty struck him, silencing his impulse to defend himself. The glances exchanged among the team suggested support beneath her words. Taking this in, Jake realized he had woven a delicate balance within their group, but he had inadvertently obscured his own journey. Sharing his vulnerabilities as he encouraged them to share theirs was paramount. As the meeting concluded, he felt a sense of clarity wash over him. This was not just about leadership, it was about authenticity. He dismantled the rigid expectations he once held of himself, crafting space for growth in both himself and his team. Yet, as he stepped away from the meeting, a new thought penetrated his mind. Was he daring enough to unveil his deepest fears? The balance between vulnerability and strength quivered like a tightrope walk. He hadn't just accepted the challenge, he had awakened it. The hour grew late as he returned home, and doubt simmered once more in the corners of his mind. He was at the precipice of a revelation that might lead to profound change, but would he have the courage to leap forward? The line between ascent and freefall blurred, and Jake confronted an unsettling reality. It was time to embrace the great unknown. But before he could act, an unexpected email notification blinked ominously on his screen, redirecting his focus to a looming decision, one that threatened to shake the very foundation of the trust he'd built. How would he tackle the newest challenge awaiting him? Jake hovered over his laptop, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat in the quiet room, punctuating the weight of the decision before him. The email contained an invitation to a major corporate leadership workshop next month, a chance to learn and network, but also an apprehension that washed over him as he considered the implications. Would attending this workshop alienate him from his team? They were on a vulnerable path and he was their guide. The suggestion of claiming the opportunity ignited a surge of ambition within him. Yet, beneath that ambition lay a torrent of self-doubt. Would the other leaders there see through his facade? The fear of inadequacy lingered, suggesting that his transformative journey was only at its nascent stage. He could almost hear Sarah's voice echoing in his head, "We need to see you take risks." 2. Uncertainty morphed into determination as he decided to seize this chance, not solely for personal gain but as a proactive step to model the willingness to grow. As days unfolded, Jake immersed himself in the preparations for the workshop while simultaneously managing the weekly challenges with his team. The line between professional and personal began to blur as he found himself frequently reflecting on what leadership truly meant. He recognized that vulnerability was not merely a tool for his team. It was a venture he needed to experience fully and openly. The second week of challenges introduced the fear factor. It was a segment designed to push every participant to articulate the moment that had shaped their professional landscape. Jake felt the need to lead by example. The night before their team meeting, he stood by his bedroom window, rehearsing his upcoming revelation. He closed his eyes, visualizing himself speaking about his greatest fear, the fear of not being enough, of not living up to the role he had stepped into. When the next meeting convened, Jake's heart raced, but his resolve remained unyielding. "I want to share my fear," he announced, his voice steady yet underscored with vulnerability. "For a long time, I've feared that I don't have what it takes to lead, to not just support you, but to guide you through complexities we face together." Sarah met his gaze, the weight of his words palpable in the air. As he spoke, he looked around the room. The faces that had once been weary with skepticism transformed into ones illuminated by understanding. One by one, team members began to share their fears, doubt, imposter syndrome, decisions that felt insurmountable. Each confession stitched a stronger bond, reinforcing the collective resilience in the atmosphere. With every word laid bare, Jake discovered something unexpected. It was liberating, cathartic even. This was not the end of his uncertainty but rather an initiation into deeper self-awareness. He was no longer just a leader orchestrating a response. He was an equal participant navigating this wild terrain alongside his team. The exploration of vulnerability was illuminating the blind spots of his professional growth. As the discussions wrapped up, an unanticipated sense of solidarity hung in the air. They created not just a team but a sanctuary, a place where individuals learned from their fears, rather than let them dictate their actions. Jake pondered the irony. By embracing his own vulnerabilities, he had unknowingly emboldened his team to confront theirs. The workshop loomed on the horizon, its potential excitement tinged with trepidation. Would he carry this momentum forward into the larger corporate arena? Would he emerge transformed or further entrenched in fear? These questions haunted him, underscoring the stakes at play. That evening, as he sat down to compose his acceptance reply for the workshop, another notification chimed, drawing his attention back to reality, a message from upper management. It outlined his impending presentation at the company's upcoming quarterly meeting. His challenge was to articulate not only the successes of his team but also the lessons learned from their vulnerabilities. Time was dwindling, pressure was mounting, and Jake sensed the blend of anticipation and dread rising within him. How could he convert this definition of leadership into a story steeped in authenticity for the greater audience? It was a pivotal moment, one where he could redefine not only the impressions held of him but also influence corporate culture to embrace vulnerability as strength. The weight of the decision came crashing down like a thunderclap. Could he transform this impending presentation into a catalyst for authentic change beyond his small circle? But beyond that question lingered another: what truth about himself was he ready to share in front of a much larger audience? As he summoned the words to respond to the invitation for the workshop, uncertainty wrestled with resolve. The clock was ticking, and the time for action was rapidly approaching. Jake leaned back in his chair, staring at the blinking cursor that mocked his indecision. The email draft sat half-finished, a physical manifestation of his tumultuous thoughts swirling in his mind. He had accepted the workshop invitation out of a blend of instinct and ambition, but now, the reality of what lay ahead felt like a plunge into icy waters. The presentation loomed large. It wasn't just any gathering. Upper management would be watching, expecting a polished performance that highlighted the undeniable success of his team. Yet, how could he showcase success without addressing the raw truths they had uncovered together? The push and pull of his thoughts kept him teetering on the edge of authenticity and the safety of formality. He envisioned the boardroom, the imposing table, the blank faces, the unspoken expectations. What if he stood there, vulnerable, and lay bare not just their accomplishments but the struggles that had shaped them? But what if they recoiled? The thought made him shudder. He craved to effect change, to take a stand against the pervasive silence surrounding vulnerability in corporate culture. Yet fear clutched at his gut. Doubt had a way of invading moments when clarity was essential. Balancing personal truth with professional expectation wrestled within him as he paced the room in quiet contemplation. He needed a strategy, an approach that blended truth with the necessary composure expected in such environments. Jake returned to his laptop, fingers hovering once more over the keys. Typing out a few key phrases, he tried to distill his thoughts into something actionable. Lead with vulnerability, he wrote. Create connection through authenticity. Each stroke felt like a stepping stone through an uncertain landscape. As he spent the next few hours crafting his presentation, he shifted between introspection and clarity. He realized that vulnerability was not merely a personal exploration but a bridge to engage others. The more he included their collective fears and triumphs, the more he could invite his audience into a shared journey. It was about creating a safe space, even within the corporate confines traditionally marked by competition and guardedness. With every crafted line, his resolve solidified. He could present the successful metrics his team had achieved, but it would be just as vital to share the challenges they overcame. Their fears weren't embarrassments to conceal. They were testament to their resilience, laboratory-like trials that formed the foundation upon which successes were built. Yet, even as he prepared, a small voice within him whispered that this was only half of his challenge. The greater test lay with his own transformation. He had to embody the courage he sought to inspire in others, to stand in front of a room full of decision-makers and not just report facts, but to offer a narrative that explored their shared humanity. The clock ticked down, encroaching rapidly on his deadline. He felt his heartbeat quicken, fueling the anticipation that drove him. The blend of fear and excitement surged within. It was time for him to face this new frontier of leadership and push beyond what had once constrained him. As he rehearsed his delivery, the inflections, the pauses meant to elicit empathy, Jake realized this was more than just a presentation. It was a defining moment, a waypoint in his evolving journey of leadership. And then, in an unexpected moment of clarity, the unmistakable realization struck him. The vulnerabilities he was preparing to share were not just about his team. They were also about himself. What he truly wanted to convey was not just the reflections of a guide leading others, but the story of a man willing to shed his own protective layers for an authentic connection. Dawn approached, bringing with it the gravity of the presentation. Jake could feel the weight settling on his shoulders, a mix of expectation and possibility. He had a choice: slip into the comfortable mask of conventional leadership or embrace the work in progress he had become. Just as he finished the final edit of his slides, another notification chimed, cutting through the stillness. A short message from Sarah flashed on his screen. "Are you ready to let them see the real you? The time has come to make your mark." Her text stirred a wave of determination within him, intensifying the bubbling anticipation. What if this was a launchpad for not just his own transformation but a shift in how leadership was perceived company-wide? But as he contemplated the profound implications of this moment, another wave of anxiety crashed inside him. What would happen if the courage he summoned faltered in front of a broader audience? Jake's heart raced as the realization hit. The stakes were far greater than he had anticipated. Genuine connection could prove revolutionary but equally risky. He stood at the precipice of his discovery, ready to embrace what lay beyond the threshold. The hour was upon him, and the moment was finally here. The presentation was not just an output, it was a launchpad for change. But with a newfound resolve, Jake was ready to leap into the unknown. And then, with a final deep breath, he prepared for the most important challenge, yet his voice quaked at the thought of the audience waiting for him. And as he stepped into the unknown, another email notification chimed, revealing his next opportunity to confront the deeper questions about his evolving role. Jake stood at the podium, the fluorescent lights dimming momentarily as whispers of anticipation rippled through the assembled crowd. This was not just any presentation. It was his metamorphosis, a culmination of the battles fought both within and outside himself. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing on him, but for the first time, it felt like an empowering force rather than a suffocating pressure. He inhaled deeply, channeling the confidence cultivated in shared vulnerability with his team. Today, I stand not just as a leader but as a fellow traveler on this journey of growth. With those words, he felt a bond form between him and his audience, the invisible threads of shared experience and mutual understanding weaving together. As he began outlining the accomplishments of his team, he interspersed it with their vulnerabilities. He recalled the fear that gripped him before confronting Tommy and the emotional unease of laying bare his own insecurities. "I once feared being inadequate," he admitted, "but I learned that acknowledgement of our vulnerabilities does not undermine our strength. It amplifies it." He watched as heads nodded, sensing resonance in their shared struggles. With each slide, Jake illustrated the journey they undertook together, emphasizing how they transformed obstacles into stepping stones. These challenges refined us. They illuminated our paths and solidified our purpose. We're not here to merely exist. We're here to evolve. As he spoke, he witnessed something within the audience shift, an engagement that echoed the very connection he had sought. The air felt electric, charged with the possibilities of transformation. Dialogue rippled through the room, and by the time Jake concluded with a clarion call for a culture rooted in vulnerability, he saw the flickering of realization in many eyes. He had started a conversation, he had lit a fire. In the days that followed, the impact of his presentation cascaded throughout the company. They initiated discussions about enhancing workplace culture, prioritizing mental health, and nurturing transparency, a ripple effect fueled by Jake's courage. For the first time, he felt not just seen, but heard. His ambition had transcended personal boundaries and had touched a corporate community. Amidst these changes, Jake embraced more responsibility with the auto shop. As the weeks progressed, he organized workshops where mechanics enhanced their skills and deepened their connections, reinforcing the familial ties he once felt slipping away. No longer was he merely a mechanic. He became a respected mentor, sparking motivation among his peers. As he stood by the front desk one afternoon, reading enthusiastic feedback from his team, a wave of pride coursed through him. Jake was not simply recognized as a facilitator of change. He had defined his narrative. Each shared goal, every run together, crystallized into a community that collectively thrived, just as his grandfather had envisioned. The final affirmations came in the form of a company recognition award, bestowed upon him for embracing vulnerability as strength. After the ceremony, Jake held the trophy tightly, feeling its weight against his heart. This was validation, a testament to everything he had cultivated. In the garage, filled with familiar faces of friends and family, he reflected not just on his journey, but on the path ahead. "We've built something incredible," he declared one evening, laughter and camaraderie intertwining with every word. No longer did he fear stepping into the light of leadership. He embraced it fiercely. Jake had conquered not just his self-doubt, but had emerged as a beacon of hope for those around him. He held unwavering confidence in his future endeavors while allowing the echoes of his past to enrich his leadership journey. Far beyond the lazy boy who lingered in the garage, Jake Johnson was now a man who had woven together ambition, legacy, and community into a single mission. This was more than a personal victory. It was a truth accepted. Real change begins with vulnerability. With renewed clarity and determination, he recognized that his journey was only beginning, a lifelong pursuit of growth, connection, and authenticity. The legacy of his family, once shadowed in doubt, now shone bright. Embrace your story just as Jake has. Be bold, be brave, and ignite your transformation. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories of personal triumph. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformation story. What have you learned? And do not wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is the lifeblood of these narratives. Don't let them go unheard.